2. Today, March 19th, 2021, I, Maya Hill, the interviewer, will be interviewing Miss Sheila Linton. Location is over Zoom, and this interview will be for the Black Student Oral History Project. So welcome, Miss Sheila. Thank you for joining me today to talk about your experience and your time at Penn State. So just to jump in, we're going to start with some background. So would you be able to tell us when you were born and where you're from?
Yes, I was born December 19th, 1950, 70 years ago. And I grew up in Philadelphia, went to public schools in Philadelphia, Huey Elementary School, Tilden, and Bartram. I was always on the honor roll, National Junior Honors, National Honor Society. And I had applied to 3 schools in my senior year. I had applied to Temple, which is local, Howard University, and Penn State. I really wanted to go to Howard with my girlfriends, I'm gonna tell you. However, through a combination of a grant and 2 other scholarships, I ended up getting a free ride to Penn State for all 4 years.
Wow.
And I told my mother, I want to go to Howard. My mother looked at me and said, Howard who? And so that's how I ended up at Penn State, but it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. I did my freshman year at the Ogontz campus. Penn State has several Commonwealth campuses, and I did my freshman year at Ogontz, and I was disappointed because I wanted to go away to school. But anyway, I only had to stay there a year, but I met literally lifelong friends. And then in my sophomore year, I moved to the main campus. My first dorm was Simmons Hall, and I made a lot of friends there. Now, the funny part is Simmons is where the members of Delta Sigma Theta lived and had their suite. I was on the 3rd floor. The president, her name was Eleanor Green, came to me and said, this is how I met Carol, to tell you the truth, came to me and said, you know, because I had, you know, I hung out in the suite and ate dinner with them and everything. So we became friends. But they knew I was going to play JKA because it's my legacy. So Eleanor approached me and said, Sheila, Carol Merrill is getting ready to go student teach in Philly. And I wanted to know, would you be willing to stay in her room for 1 semester until she comes back? I said, Eleanor, but you know I'm getting ready to play JKA. And she said, but Sheila, you are our sister in another way. And the reason why they asked is because after that first semester, they knew that I would be moving into McElwain, which is where the AKAs were after I finished pledging. So I said, okay. So I literally moved into Carol Merrill's room. It was a single room. While she student taught, I lived there for 1 full semester, and I pledged AKA living in the Delta Suite corridor. Okay, so but that is also how I bonded and became very, very close friends with all of the Deltas of my generation.
So I want to just kind of interject really fast.
Sure.
So we're gonna take a few steps back a little bit of how you even heard about Penn State, and then also, were you a first generation college student, or did your parents go to college before you?
My mother's one of 9. I am one of 25 first cousins. I am the first one to go to college, to go and graduate from college. There's several behind me, but I started Penn State in 1968, graduated in 72, and I was the first one of when I say my immediate family, I'm talking about my mother's siblings and all of their children. There were 25 first cousins. I was the first one. I think I heard about Penn State actually through trying to find scholarship money. And I can't remember what the name of college, not College Bound. Maybe it was College Bound or you've heard, okay. It was, and the man who ran it, I don't even know if he's still alive. His name was Bob Bird. And Bob Bird hooked me up with, well, fill out all this paperwork and we'll see what we could work with. So it was through College Bound that I got a combination of a grant and it was a part loan. I guess that's the grant part. But anyway, I know I paid not a dime for the 4 years, but that was one. But I had two other scholarships as well. One from the Dickerson Estate Foundation, which was a foundation through a family friend. And even way back in the day, School District of Philadelphia gave out scholarships for people who were, it was called Future Teachers of America. And I was able, so the combination of the Dickerson Estate Foundation, Future Teachers of America, and it was called National Defense Student Loan. That's what it was called. The three of those, I had money for tuition, room and board, and books. So that's, and then my mom sent me money, weekly for, spending money. But she worked 3 jobs while I was at school. She was a single parent at the time. And so that's how I got to pay when, like I said, when all the scholarships and grants came through, and I'm like, oh, I don't have to pay nothing when I go to Penn State. But Howard was going to put me in a work study program. And I just remember my mother, because I laugh every time. I said, but Mom, I want to go to Howard with Pam and my girlfriend. She said, looked at me and said, Howard who? Rest is history. Went to Ogons and met.
So how did you did you feel prepared in going into college, like knowing that you wanted to go to several places and you got accepted in Penn State and you got a full scholarship? So did you feel fully prepared by your high school training when you got to the Ogons campus? And
not until like I got my first semester grades. I was an honor roll student all my life, period. I flunked my first course my freshman year at Penn State, and was biological science. And there was, I took like 12 credits or something like that. That's the only one that I didn't do well in, and I retook it later on. So my cum started low in the beginning because of that the F in I side. But moving forward, now that I knew what I was up against, because I don't want to say it wasn't hard, but high school, I didn't struggle through high school. I mean, I got my A's and a couple of B's and I was good to go. So, but Penn State was a rude awakening. It was a rude awakening. And like I said, I almost had a nervous breakdown after flunking my first course in my whole life. And, but I pulled myself together. And as each semester went on, I got, the hang of it. The one thing that really pulled my cum up in the end was when I was a senior, I majored in education, elementary education. And in my senior year, I was one of 14 students who had an opportunity to student teach in Panama. And I forgot how it was presented to me, but I was in some kind of meeting and they were talking about it, trying to recruit education majors to go. There were 3 places. You go to Panama, Rio, and some other place in Central America. And I listened, and they had converted an old World War II barracks into a dorm for Penn State. And they even had a sign that said Penn State Hilton. So I was 20 years old, first airplane flight, the whole 9 yards. But I applied, and then when I got accepted, I called home, Mom, I got accepted. They accepted me. What should I tell them? And my mother, without blinking, said, tell them you're going. You're in the program. So September of 1971 through December of 71, I lived and worked in Panama. I was in the canal zone, and I taught the children of parents who were serving in the armed services. So I told you, because they needed an American education. So it was a wonderful experience. And that's what gave me the travel bug. So, and as I said, I pledged my sophomore year. Yeah, the year that I came up, 69, 70, I went over in April of 1970, made lifelong friends. I'm the godmother, been maid of honor, the whole 9 yards. But again, my time span at Penn State was 68 to 72. That was in the midst of the Black Power movement.
Yeah.
I mean, totally. And laughing because by the time I got to main campus, I was letting my hair, you know, get the perm out, go natural. My mother had a stroke. I had an Angela Davis afro out here. I'm gonna have to send you a picture of it. I wore well, we all did. We all wore, you know, big afros, men and women. And when I came up in 1969, I mean, to main campus, Penn State had 35,000 students on main campus. There were 500 Blacks, which meant I was the only one in most of my classrooms. I mean, period. But it also, and I forgot who started it, but I know that Carol Merrill was a real big part of it. There was an organization started called the Black Student Union, and you joined. There were meetings, and we had activities and things of that nature. So in terms of activism, you know, I attended all the Black Student Union meetings and whatever we were supposed to do. I can't think of any physical activity right now off the top of my head, but annually we have something called the Black Arts Festival. Oh my God, it was off the chain. And I had gone as a freshman when I was at Penn State, and on some bus that somebody had chartered, whatever. But at any rate, I was active, as most of us were. And at Penn State, because there were so few Blacks, and Penn State's a huge campus, but if you're walking down a sidewalk or something and you see a Black person way over there, you're like, hey, hey. I had a very, very good education. I graduated early, ended up taking some extra courses over the summer. So I came out in March of 72 instead of June, because Penn State, I don't know if they still are, they want a tri-semester.
No, they're on I think a 2-semester.
Oh yeah, we had fall, winter, and spring semesters when I was going. Fall was from September to December, winter was January to March, and then spring was April to June.
Did you enter your freshman year in spring of 68, or was it?
No, fall. I graduated from college in June of 68. I entered Penn State as a freshman September of 1968, but I went to the Ogontz campus. Okay. So I was at the Ogontz campus for the academic year of 68-69, and the academic year of 69-70, I went to main campus and then graduated in March of 72.
So entering into, because you hit on student activism, and I kind of want to go back to that. You entered your freshman year during the, like as you mentioned, the height and climactic point of, you know, racial tensions. In the spring, you were a senior, and that was in April. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. of 68 was assassinated.
Oh, I was still in high school. Yeah, I was in high school. Yeah,
you were a senior. Yeah, in high school. Right. And so when you get to the Ogontz campus and you see that there's not many African-American students on campus, and then when you get to the main campus and you see the same things, do you think that the racial tensions within the nation were infiltrating themselves in like the atmosphere or environment at Penn State during your time there? And if it did, like as you mentioned, like you were involved in BSU, which was before you arrived, was the Douglas Association. And did you see yourself as an activist? Like, what was your?
Oh no. I was. How can you put it? I'll tell you, I was sensitive to the whole Black Power movement because in my freshman year at Ogontz, I read the Autobiography of Malcolm X. It was 1968. It blew me away and I think that because, you know, I mean, I grew up in Philly, we didn't have Black studies or anything like that. But the Autobiography of Malcolm X that I read in 1968 literally is what was the genesis of me starting to delve into, I would just say, just Black history, Black life, what it, you know, what it means to deal with racism, you know, the whole 9 yards. But I wasn't a Black Panther carrying tape with the beret, but I was, you know, always supportive of anything that we had to do, you know, in terms of the Black Student Union.
So,
and,
oh, go ahead. No, you
go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Okay. So when you got to Penn State, when you arrived at the main campus, was it what you expected, or what did you expect that experience was going to be like for you? Like you mentioned, like when you saw a Black person, you like waved, and like it was kind of like an exciting thing, like because there were so few of you guys. So what was that? What did you kind of expect?
Well, I didn't know what to expect, but I got my room assignment, and my roommate, her name was Liz. I can't remember her last name. She was white. So that was not, you know, but we got along famously. I love to tell the story. She introduced me to Barbara Streisand, her music, and I introduced her to Isaac Hayes. And Isaac Hayes had an album out at the time called Hot Buttered Soul. And I remember Liz said, oh my God, that looks like something you're supposed to eat. And so I had a white roommate, and I lived on the 3rd floor, and everybody kind of, you know, we all got along. However, and somebody wrote a book about this, I believe, when it was mealtime, be it breakfast, lunch, or dinner, and you went to the dining room, even though my roommate could be in there sitting at a table, I always ate with the Black kids, with the other Black students. We all did. You know, when you came in the dining room with your little tray and everything, you scanned the room and you looked for wherever some other Black students were sitting. But I know somebody wrote a book, something like, why do all the Blacks sit together, or something in the cafeteria.
In the cafeteria, yeah, I actually have that book.
Oh, okay.
The author, but I think it's Tatum or something like that.
Yeah, I don't remember, but I just remember that that's when the title came out, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. I did that at Penn State. We all sat together in the cafeteria. And it wasn't, I don't even know if I ever had a discussion with my roommate about it, because I would go downstairs, go into the dining room, and she could be sitting right here. But instead of me going to eat with my white roommate, I always looked for, it was almost like a, not a ritual. It was almost like, that's just what you did. Like, you know, you just came into the dining room and you looked for the other Black people in the dining room. Whether you knew them well or not, but most of us, you know, did get to know each other.
You said that as like, that was a silent rule, like you couldn't sit with your roommate.
It's not that you couldn't,
or why didn't you?
You just did, because it was your time to be with some other Black folks. Remember, I said all of my classes, I was usually 9 times. I don't think I was ever in a class where there was more than 2 of us. I'm talking my whole 4 years at Penn State, Ogans and main campus. I was usually the only Black student there. I know what I was going to say. When I came up there, I think we were the first largest Black class of Blacks that came up, 69, 70. I think it was like 500 of us total on campus, but there were 35,000 students at Penn State. So do the math in terms of percentage. But the other thing too, in terms of being a Black student at Penn State, those of us who were members of the Divine Nine, we were, and again, because it was during the Black Power movement, we were a very united group of people, because we did things together like the Black Arts Festival. We were just a very close-knit group of people, because we needed each other just for, you know, the mental support, just for mental support. Our favorite pastime was playing pinochle. Well, the Philly people played pinochle. The Pittsburgh people played bidwist. So I tried to learn bidwist. It's a little like pinochle, but there was just 2 distinct groups of card playing folks. And you primarily played it in one of the sorority suites. Well, it was only the AKAs and Deltas. And you know, the guys would come over and everybody would play cards to the wee hours of the morning sometimes.
So I want to kind of jump to the social aspect and hear about some of your involvement in different social things. You mentioned that you pledged and you became an AKA, and I believe you said you were a legacy. That's why you pledged.
Well, no, not perfect. Like my mother did not go to college, but she had 3 first cousins who they were like her sisters. I called them aunts, and they pledged AKA. And which is why I pledged AKA.
So what was that social like for you? So do you remember any, I mean, you gave some events and some activities that you guys kind of did within the dorm room, but do you remember any big events? So we can talk about the Black Arts Fest, the Black Arts Fest of 70. And you said you had gone to the Black Arts Fest in 1969, which was the first Black Arts Festival. So what was some of your favorite things from the Black Arts Fest, and what are some things that you remember? And knowing that the Black Arts Fest was for
Festival, Black
Arts Festival was a way for African Americans to celebrate Black culture, to celebrate Black writers, poets, musicians, etc. So, what were some of your favorite parts? And maybe
it was just the atmosphere. I mean, you know, we talking 50 years ago, you know, keep that in mind. I just remember the excited to be part of the activity. And in terms of, I mean, State College is a lily white town. So, Maya, are you there? Okay.
Yes, I am.
State College, it's not like you could go to a local club or something like that. Why is it saying my internet? 1 second. I'm gonna check it. It was just being able to be around Black people in a social environment, the Black Arts Festival. I mean, I grew up in Philly. I grew up with friends. We all went to the Uptown Theater, and we saw every R&B group, you know, from Motown to, you know, I saw Stevie Wonder when he was 12 years old with the harmonica doing fingertips. So, you know, you grow up being used to being around people of your same culture. Now, I went to an integrated high school, but I had, you know, I had friends, you know, white and Black, but Black culture was a part of my life. My Baptist church, for one. I come from, like I said, a family, a big family, 25 first cousins. And so I was used to that. I'm sorry, I got tickled. So there was, when you went into town, I'm talking about back at State College, the most rude I had 2 rude awakenings in terms of not having a Black culture there. I looked high, and are you from Philly?
I have family from Philly, so okay. I do know Philly.
Well, there is a pastry called Tasty Cakes.
Yeah, no, Tasty
Cakes. It's based in Philly. I grew up on Tasty Cakes, you know, crimpets and
the chocolate cupcakes are the best, not the crimpets. No.
Okay, I grew up on. I went to where you would, you know, buy stuff. They didn't have Tasty Cakes. I'm like, why don't you have Tasty? I had no idea that Tasty Cakes was regional. I mean, that's really opened my eye. And you know what they had? Instead, Drake's, whatever. I'm like, this is not a Tasty Cake. The name of the brand was called Drake's. The second rude awakening I had was going into a deli, and I called myself ordering a hoagie. They never heard of the word hoagie. I'm keep in mind, 69, we're talking 50 years ago. What I called a hoagie, they called a sub.
Yeah.
But the roll was not Amoroso's roll like we had in Philly. And it was almost like a soft hot dog kind of roll. And I'm like, what is this? So those are two things that, in terms of being Black in a total all-white environment, those are two things that I just still remember, that I couldn't find a tasty cake, and they did not have hoagies and steaks on Amorosa rolls, because those are both Philly things. One of the classes, I'm jumping, I still remember the name of it. It was LA 198. It was a elective course. I don't remember the name of the professor. He was tall, had the big bush, and he taught a course. I can't remember the name. That was the number of it, but it was about Black dialect, and we all tried to take it, you know. And he taught this course on, I guess you would call it Ebonics today, but he broke down Ebonics. Why is it that Black people talk a certain way, and the whole 9 yards? That was the only the course with any Black substance to it, and he was the only Black professor I had during the whole 4 years. So so that was that was another experience, because even in high school I had both Black and white teachers, but this State College is a totally white environment. The one thing I think that bonded us in terms of social life, the social life revolved around, for Black students, revolved around events and fundraisers that the Divine Nine groups had. Cabarets, parties at the Kappa House or whatever. The place that most of the cabarets was held was called Skimont Lodge. And that's where you got to go, and like you were back home in Philly, you know, you would have a social event with music and partying and everything. We did those at Skimont Lodge, and primarily at house or the Alpha House. But that was where other than people coming around, sitting around, and you in the Delta Suite or the AKA Suite, the other socialization really happened. Everything for Blacks, all the socialization took place through the Divine Nine members for other Black people.
So in your classes, and you said being that you were, one of probably like the only African-American student, or maybe one of two in a specific class, and only having had taken one class with an African-American professor at the time, did you feel like you had enough support as a student, as an African-American student, to succeed on the campus? Because I know in 68, which was before you got to, or 69, before you got to main campus, the 13 demands were pushed out by the Douglas Association, trying to create and increase student enrollment. What you said, your year coming to main campus, enrollment had increased, and also increased a lot of other things for African-American students so that they can be successful. However, I know it was mentioned in one of the other interviews that a lot of African-American students who were there, I guess, during the period when they increased the enrollment, like to almost 500 to 1,000 students, a lot of those students either left, or they dropped out, or they weren't able to make it through. That was mentioned by another interview. I don't know, but so, and they stated that it was because of lack of support. So did you feel as though you had enough support, even if it came through like the Divine Nine? Like, did you feel like you had enough support systems on campus to, thrive?
Are you talking about to succeed academically?
To succeed academically, and also like as a, mentioning it as a, Penn State is an isolating place, and, not many African-Americans. So academically, but also even in the social aspect, in a sense of, finding a good community to help you enjoy college.
Well, again, had I not pledged, I would have felt very isolated, because by pledging, you live with your sorority sisters or your, fraternity brothers. So I did not, I would have, I don't know what I would have done. I would have felt very isolated. In terms of support, I just like in high school, I went to class, did what I was supposed to do. There was no tutoring available. There was no professor that I could think of. I don't even remember who my advisor was. I mean, you just went, did what you're supposed to do, come home, and And the other thing in terms of social, another just flip back, the guy that I was dating in my freshman year when I was at Ogons, he went to Temple. So in terms of socially, my boyfriend lived in Philly while I was 400 miles away, up or 200 miles away, however far it is, up at Penn State. So, you know, that just, I'm just throwing that in. What else? Support wise, I mean, the support that I would have sought out or needed primarily came from being close to the other Black students that were there, be they divine, I mean, not just AKs. Like I said, I was very, very close to the Deltas. When I went over, they showered me with, because I'm living in the Delta Suite Carter in Simmons Hall. They showered me with pink and green gifts and everything. And, you know, I was very close to them. And the funny part is a lot of my friends who were pledging, they were pyramids while I was an Ivy, but I was good friends with all their big sisters. And so you can, you know, I could like, oh, hey, Al, how you doing? And it was just kind of funny because I could interact with their big sisters where they could not, in a way. What else? What else? I can't think of anything else that jumps out at me. The bottom line is I did get an excellent education at Penn State, bar none, bar none.
So when you graduated, what was the atmosphere like at Penn State, your final semester, your final academic year? Did you think that the atmosphere had shifted or changed? Like I said, since it was a very climactic and racially tensioned, you know, climate within the nation at the time and the Black Power movement and all those things, do you think that the atmosphere shifted at Penn State in any way?
Well, keep in mind, in my senior year, September of 1970 to December of 1970, I was in Panama, so I was not on main campus. Okay. When I came back to main campus of January 71, and then I graduated in that, no, that's not right. I went to Panama in September of 71, I'm sorry, to December of 71. When I came back to campus January of 72, I was only there for one semester because I came out in March because I had taken some classes. I was on my way out. I'm like 3 months, and I'm out. So in terms of my senior year, I wasn't really, I was only on campus for one semester, and that was a semester where I was on my way out. Let me hold on. I'm going to show you something real fast. But I had it pulled out because my line sisters and I just celebrated our 50th anniversary as Golden Sorors. And I pulled this out to show, this is, can you see it?
Yes.
That's me in the center with the graduation hat on, and the soror right here with the other Black hat on. That was, we were all three of us came out together, and my uncle had taken this picture, and that's all my family in the background. I had a caravan of cars to come up to see me graduate because, again, I was the first one in my family to get a college education, to graduate from college. And there were like 3 cars with like 5 people in each car and everything that came up. So in terms of my senior year, like I said, the first half of it, I was in Panama, and that was just really a wonderful experience because we did side trips. We did a trip through, our supervisor also lived in the dorm with us. They organized a trip for us to go through the Miraflores locks, you know, from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean, and go through the steps. We visited the San Blas Islands, very primitive. But like I said, it was really a one. And again, there were 14 of us, 2 Blacks, me and another girl named Clotilde. But I was used by now. I'm used to that. I'm the only one, but I'm good.
Yeah, yeah. So I kind of want to drift off since the interview will be wrapping up shortly. I kind of want to drift off into some final questions around legacy, memory, and memories. So, did you ever get a chance to go to an HBCU? Or did you go back to get further your education?
Wait, hold up. First of all, when I started teaching in 72, and I taught for 3 years, and then I had this opportunity to go to work at Gimbel's department store in their management. I wanted to be a fashion buyer, and I'm like, I gotta at least try it. I lasted 6 months, came right back to teaching. But when I did, because I broke that service, I broke my seniority. Now remember, I started teaching in 72. I took a year off to get my master's, 75, 76. Came back to teaching January 76. June of 77, the school district of Philadelphia started laying off teachers.
Wow.
I was outdone. I could collect unemployment. Now I have an apartment, I have a car note, but they started laying off teachers. So I had to start looking for a job. I worked in a CETA funded program for a little while, and then an opportunity came up that I found looking through the paper in the want ads. Lo and behold, I looked at the qualifications. I wasn't sure what it was. I said, well, I could do that, and I could do that, and I could maybe BS my way through that one. Went on the interview. I called back for the second interview. Maya, I had never known or really heard of working for a philanthropic foundation. I got hired by the Glenmead Trust Company, which oversaw the Pew Charitable Trust. They have now, the Pew family of the founders of Sun Oil Company, and they have now broken off. There's just the Pew Charitable Trust. And I was there for almost 10 years. And I worked my way up to program officer, 1981. Now I started at Pew in 79. 1981, we have this gets back to the Black colleges. We have an educational advisory committee meeting with the board of directors of Pew to give us some direction on what kind of funding we should do. Keep in mind, the Pew Charitable Trust was the 3rd largest foundation in the country, behind Ford and Rockefeller. I think when I was there, their endowment was like $4 billion or something like that. We had a meeting. One of the advisory committee people was named Bart Giamatti. He used to be the president of Yale. Then he went off to do something in baseball. And again, we're getting advice, looking for. Bart Giamatti told the board of directors of the Pew Charitable Trust, I'm sitting in this meeting, and said, there's one thing I really strongly suggest that you do. He said that Fisk University is dying on the vine financially. They might even close. And he said, I implore you to please do something to support Fisk, because to lose Fisk University would be an American educational tragedy. Well, the board took that into heart. And then my vice president, there were like 3 vice presidents. My vice president came to me and said, Sheila, can you look into, the situation with Fisk? And we were supporting colleges in like homogeneous groups. Like, you don't compare a Berean Institute to a Harvard. You're talking about apples and oranges. So I said, I'll look into it. Long story short, I ended up doing a study on historically Black colleges and universities. We only supported private ones, not public. And I did get some assistance from somebody, I forget, somebody that was knowledgeable, had read books. Maya, I was able to travel to 14 historically Black colleges.
Wow.
I met with the president of the college, his cabinet, and then I had a separate meeting with the students because I wanted to get a feel for the college. I'm on this fact-finding mission. I'm 30 years old, child. Wait a minute. I'm on this fact-finding mission, and in the end, I visited all 14. Met the students blew me away. When I interviewed the students at Spelman, well, at each school, I would always ask, well, what do you want to be? What is your career goals? This woman, young lady looked at me and said, oh, I plan to be the first Black governor of South Carolina. I'm like, what? That is the level of confidence these young ladies had. When I was at Morehouse, one of the questions I always asked was, well, why did you seek out Morehouse? And I remember one young man said, I grew up in I attended predominantly white schools through white schools because wherever he lived, suburbs, whatever. And he said, I just wanted once in my lifetime to have a majority experience. I had never even heard that term before, but I understood where he was coming from. He said, I just wanted to have a majority experience. And at each school, I was blown away because I did not see, I had something to compare it with. Now I went to Penn State and now I'm visiting all these Black colleges and I'm seeing talk about support. Morehouse, I think it was every Monday, I may be wrong on the day, but every Monday, every student in Morehouse had to come to I guess it was the auditorium or whatever, but it was called chapel. And every Monday, they had somebody giving them a speech that made them feel like they could walk on water. I mean, it was you could do anything that you set your mind to. Don't let anybody, I got to meet Andrew Young because he was a Morehouse graduate. That as you can see, this was 1981, but I still get excited talking about it because that was my exposure to HBCUs. I got to visit 14 of them, got to see the college life, college campus. I don't know if you know about Hampton and Bill Harvey, the president of Hampton, but he's getting ready to retire. But he was only in his third year there when I went, and I got him to be on our advisory committee. By the time I finished with the study, and over a 6-year period, we ended up giving $18 million to these 14 Black colleges over a 6-year period. But when I finished, I said, you know what, if I had it to do all over again, I would have a hard time picking between Hampton or Spelman. That's how, to walk on campus and everybody Black and and but so HBCUs are very near and dear to my heart because of the study that I did and the interactions that I had with them through funding their grants and proposals.
That's amazing. And it's so interesting to see how, life, turns out. Like you wanted to go to an HBCU, but you still got that experience. It came back around full circle, although like you went to Penn State, but you still got to feel that like experience that longing that you had
as an adult now.
As an adult.
Still, I got it.
Yeah.
And you know what the difference is too? My friends that went to historically Black colleges and universities, they always go back to homecoming. Homecoming is really big in their life. And I haven't been back to Penn State since '73, because my girlfriend was still up there, my line sister. They do have a Black student alumni reunion that has started in recent years, but I haven't had the opportunity to go. But there's just something about the bonding and camaraderie of that HBCU students have with each other and their university. I didn't get that at Penn. I mean, like I said, I haven't been back to Penn State since '73. I don't have that pull to go back to Penn State like my girlfriends have going back to Howard or Morgan or whatever. I mean, it's a different animal.
Yeah, no, I did experience that. Before my senior year of high school, I went on a HBCU tour in all the southern schools, and we went to Spelman and Morehouse's homecoming. Oh man, I was like, I could stay down here for the rest of my life. Although, I didn't end up. I ended up at Penn State, and I had an amazing experience. But before even applying to colleges, I hadn't really heard about a lot of HBCUs. I knew one of my biology teachers, she had went to an HBCU, so she would tell us about. She went to Tuskegee, and she would tell us about. So we went to go visit, and it was like, oh my eyes were opened up to see like, wow, why didn't anybody tell me about this beforehand? But I think that just having that experience, like you said, being able to see the community, the connectivity, the unity, the beauty that comes when Black people join together, it's like, oh my God, this is beautiful. And like you said, the training that each student gets. I know friends and family members.
Mentors. They get mentors. Yeah. They get Penn State. Like I said, I can't even tell you who my advisor was at Penn State. I really can't. Yeah. But I know I had one because everybody has an advisor. But at the HBCUs, there's a connection between the professors and the students, and it's just a whole different world. And like I said, when I'm like, oh, if I had to do it all, I would have a hard time choosing between Hampton and Spelman. I was blown away by those schools, but all of them were great. I mean, I visited Tuskegee. It was all the private ones. All three were Morehouse, Spelman, and at the time, Atlanta Clark University. Clark was a separate graduate school. And then I'm trying to think who it merged with. It merged with something, and it's now called Clark Atlanta University. Clark was the undergraduate. Atlanta University was a graduate school, and the Clark at Atlanta University merged to become Clark Atlanta or Atlanta Clark, but
yes, Clark Atlanta University.
Okay, right. And I did Howard, I did Hampton, I did one school in Wilberforce. Went to Wilberforce, Tuskegee. Oh my God. There was a school that I had never heard of, but the story, I don't know if you know anything about Xavier University in Louisiana.
I went to visit there. Oh my goodness.
Do you see my
Yes, I wanted to go there, but they weren't responsive. So anyway.
Xavier University and Dillard were side by side. I went to see both of those. But I did not know, when doing my research, Xavier University produced the highest percentage of African Americans who went on to med school. They did more than Morehouse, and Morehouse had its own med school. The president at the time, and I think he's getting ready to retire, is Dr. Norman Francis. These people, they were just bigger than life for me. And but anyway, so I'm thinking about the school. Xavier blew me away in terms of the product, and not of what, when I looked at where their kids go, after they graduate. Xavier, Dillard, Johnson C. Smith in North Carolina, Bennett College. Bennett was an all-girls school. Did I go to? And I went to Benedict. Benedict is in South Carolina, and all I remember is the president of Benedict ended up being the president at Fisk when we funded it. So, I felt really good because I knew who the president was, but also through this experience, and again, being able to get $18 million funneled into these 14 schools over a period of years. The president of St. Augustine in North Carolina recommended my name to be included in Who's Who Among African Americans, the book, Who's Who. And I remember getting this thing and reading, like, whoa. And he said to me, I was back to Pew. I was the first Black professional person they had ever hired in terms of being at the top professional level. And anyway, so Dr. Prevail Robinson recommended my name. I filled out the application, and lo and behold, my name currently appears in the book called Who's Who Among African Americans, because $18 million is nothing to sneeze at.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And, you know, the education that you were awarded to at Penn State, you know, kind of started that trajectory of you being able to get that position. And then, you know, you now awarded with such a, you know, a high esteemed title, I would say. You know, my name is not in there yet. Who's to say it won't get in there after this project, right? But, you know, so I have like 2 more questions as we wrap up. So one, if you now during the interview, like during this interview, and looking back at your time as a college student at Penn State, what is one thing that you would have told your 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old self about your college experience, or how you would go through college? Like, what would be one thing you would tell yourself?
Study harder than you've ever studied before. That's the first thing that I can think of. And yeah, just study. And I would also, again, remember I told you that my boyfriend was in Philly, which I kind of, you know, I didn't date anybody on campus. So I said, if I had to do all over again, I mean, I'm only 19 years old. And, you know, but I'm in love with Ernie. So I'm, you know, but I would say, tell myself to expand your horizons a little bit. And I would also say that you might have been an A student at Bartram, but if you don't study 3 times as hard, you're gonna be a C student at Penn State. So that, and when you say what, that is what I tell all the younger cousins now and going to college. Your first year is going to kick your behind if you don't get on the right road early. And it's something I tell all of them. I said, you know, particularly your freshman year, get that 3 point something, so that later on, you know, you won't have these, it won't be so hard to get, you know, your GPA up. Oh, I know what I was going to tell you about, which is what made me think about student teaching. For the first time because it was, student teaching was 12 credits. And I got an A. So I had a 4 point, the only 4.0 I had ever had for one semester. But that's what I'm saying. That one was able to pull me over the hump, you know, in terms of my overall GPA coming out. And so, you know, the other thing too is what make friends in college, because sometimes they will become your life, literally your lifelong friends. And my line sister was the maid of honor in her wedding. I'm the godmother of both of her children. We both 7. So to give you, and we met when we were 18 and 19 years old. But make friends and study hard, but find a way to also have a personal life, or I don't know if you want to call it social life or whatever, because you can't study 24/7. You know, you can't always be about academics. Find an organization that you might want to join. Like the same line sister, she was a member of Penn State's, what was called, concert choir. One summer they traveled and had concerts all through Europe. Wow. I mean, that, you know, that kind of thing. I mean, and that's outside of the realm of just, you know, the Divine Nine, but, you know, there are other things to get yourself involved with. And the crux of my education as an educator at Penn State, and I'm gonna wrap it up. Then I went on 3 years later, oh gosh, this was 76. When I was 25, I got my master's from Drexel in library science. Because I got a fellowship, and I don't pay for full school.
That's right. If you
I don't pay for school. And my girlfriend's mother was a librarian, went to school district, and she found that Drexel was looking to recruit minorities into the field of library science because there weren't a lot, even, you know, be it school or in general. So I'm like, I got to get these 24 credits to keep my job anyway as a teacher, because you had to get X number of credits. So, and back then the school district of Philadelphia allowed you to take a study leave. I took a study leave. I had the fellowship, I had a stipend, but my mother helped me with all my bills. So again, Mom, can I do this? Yes, tell them you can do it. My mom paid my car note, my car insurance for a whole year. I mean, I paid the rent and everything else, but she paid for my car note and my car insurance. But between my foundation of learning how to be a teacher at Penn State, and then actually working in the classroom, I was born to be a teacher. I mean, period. In 2002, I don't know if you've ever heard of, well, at any rate, I think it was 1999, the school district of Philadelphia identified a group of teachers, middle school teachers, and I always taught in the hood, middle school teachers, to go through a program called National Board Certification. None of us had ever heard of it. We were the blind leading the blind. But it is to become a National Board Certified teacher, it is the highest level of certification you can get as a teacher in the United States. You know, it's the equivalent of getting your doctorate in some other field. It took me 3 tries because none of us knew what we were doing, but I became a National Board Certified teacher in 2002. My reason for saying this is when I became, it was only like maybe 10 of us in the whole school district. But that experience, again, I draw from the education that I got at Penn State to be an educator. And it all kind of like ties in. And because of that status, I then, a couple of years later, I became Teacher of the Year for my region and a finalist for Teacher of the Year for the whole school district. And I came out of the classroom in 2003 and became a new teacher coach. You had to apply for it and take tests and everything. I loved it. I love being a teacher. I am in touch with, I'm gonna get teary, the kids that I taught when I did leave Pew after 10 years, because I burned out. I came back to teaching. I taught at Beaver Middle School for 5 years. I taught at Pierce Middle School for 10 years. They were 11 and 12 years old. I taught 6th and 7th graders through Facebook.
Wow.
Starting in 2007, that's when I joined Facebook, kicking and screaming. I have probably befriended, or they have friended me, I would say 50 or 60 of my former students who are in their 30s, 40s. Some of them are grandparents.
Wow.
Again, like I said, I was just born to be I've been invited to weddings, I've been invited to baby showers. I love my kids. And so again, and I was fortunate to teach. When I say teach in the hood, I always taught kids that of African-American descent. So I also had like an invisible curriculum. Thinking back to the Morehouse Spelman people, telling my kids, you can do anything that you plan to be, but you don't live in Philly. One of my former 7th grade students is a city councilwoman in Philadelphia, Jamie Gautier. I have 2 lawyers. I have 4 that have doctorates. I got 5 ministers. I'm so proud of them. What can I tell you? I'm so proud of them. And I don't have children biologically, so everybody knows I call the kids that I taught, I call them my kids. But the oldest, they're well into their 40s now.
Wow.
So
I can see the passion of the,
you see my background.
Yeah, I can see it. I can see it. Yeah,
you know, I had to get that when I got the job at Temple. Because remember, I said, oh, this was brand new. I am now the program coordinator for teachers seeking National Board Certification at Temple University, with me being one of the first ones. But everything is now virtual. I'm like, I got to get a background. So I got the little globe and the books and everything. So when I do my little workshops and stuff, try to make it feel like I'm in a classroom.
Yes, I feel like I'm in a classroom. I've learned so much from your experience and you sharing your story at Penn State. But one final question, and just one more final question.
Sure.
If you could describe your college experience in one word or one phrase, what would it be and why?
Life, well, one word. I was going to say life-changing.
You can use that. Yes, we hyphenate that. We can hyphenate that. That's two words. It can go together.
Life-changing. I am who I am because I had a sound foundation. I am who I am. Life-changing in terms of me professionally, life-changing in terms of my literally lifelong friends. As I said, my line went over, well, not went over, my line is, we are now 50-year Golden Sword. Boulé got canceled in Philly last year because of the pandemic. So what we started doing last September, we have a happy hour Zoom meeting the fourth Saturday of every month.
Wow.
And because we were all looking forward to seeing each other at the Boulé. I mean, we have folks that live in Massachusetts, in California, in Texas. So we get on our little Zoom thing and, and catch up with each other. That's life-changing. I mean, I don't know how many people can say, well, we've been friends, actually it's more than 50 years because we started in 69. But it is life-changing in terms of your personal development as a person, life-changing in terms of the educational foundation that you got because you had to learn how to study. I'm telling you, I'm on a roll at Bartram. Okay, when's the test? Aced it, Penn State was, I keep telling you, it was a rude awakening. It was a rude awakening, but I got it together. I got my 4.0 at the end.
Yes, it all paid off because now here we are talking almost 50 years later about your experience and all of the wonderful accolades that you have been able to achieve. So, Ms. Sheila, I want to say thank you so much for joining me today to be interviewed for this project. I really appreciate you just going into details, not just about your time at Penn State, but also how Penn State allowed you to cultivate other lifelong and life meaningful experiences. And then also like the community aspect of you still being in relations and in contact with the people who you attended school with, and then also within your sorority. So thank you for just taking the time to join me today. I believe that your story will add a huge and another important aspect to this project and all of the other interviews that I've done. So thank you.
You are quite welcome. And Carol.